of the problems we have with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is that he's deliberately and temperamentally an anti-Marcos in a sense that he constantly tries to avoid confrontation. He constantly
Mhm.
tries to avoid to come off as authoritarian, right? Now, Lelo's theory is that he's bounded still by the EDSA constitutional order, ironically. My argument is precisely because he wants to rehabilitate his name, he knows the shadow of the reputation, and then he knows na mutually assured destruction yan if he goes with the Dutertes or against other. So, if you look at it in a weird way, BBM is the most affable. It's like president. We have correct us. I mean, you're the historian between the two of us, but from a political scientist point of view, I look at it it's like, yeah, he's kind of like the most affable, least defensive, least pecan. I mean, you mentioned some of the
Mhm.
more nice guys. I know they were pecan back in the day from my own.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like they would call you. They would, it's like they didn't like what you wrote. Like it's like BBM, he just takes the punches and he's just okay what's going on with BBM? What is your read of him? Is it timidity? I mean, the term they use is puting, right? Like we call him tigre, right? Like from the north. I mean, but his critics call him kuting, right? So like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
what's this kuting
yeah.
phenomenon with BBM? How do you read that? It's
You know,
weird.
he was, I was in LaSalle with him, Green Hills. He was one grade below me. And I used to remember him, he would play soccer, right? And his style of playing soccer was completely passive. I mean, it looked like he wasn't really that interested in it because he wasn't interested in athletic competition. And my sense from stories that you hear is, he's a party boy. He likes to party. He doesn't, he likes to sit back and watch Netflix or whatever, with his kids. He just enjoys relaxing and he
Ant-Man, right?
enjoys,
You watch
huh? Yeah,
Ant-Man before you run.
yeah, right, right. At one point in his life, I don't know if he still does it. He liked to get high. He liked to kick back. These are not these are
Whoa,
not the
whoa,
true.
whoa! We sent the whoa, bro! Don't do that.
Oh, and it's true. I mean, it's not just anecdotal. I mean, there's all kinds of first-hand sort of witnesses to his proclivities, as it were. Uh, you should hear the stories about Oxford, etc. But anyway, so so that's
Wait,
my
wait, wait,
experience.
wait, wait. To the degree that you can share, can you tell me a little bit about Oxford? Because I watch his, I mean, sorry, I didn't watch directly, but he has some vlogs about Oxford, and then he just talks about, Isaiah Berlin was here. This is the Great Hall of this. Medyo ganon yung conversation niya.
Yeah, yeah. No, one of my colleagues was in Oxford with him, and there's stories about him getting drunk and driving around Oxford and lying down on the street, and so forth. But as I said, all of this is really all about how he always liked to party. I don't think he ever took his life seriously. And if it wasn't for his mother, I don't think he'd want to be president. He's just not, personality wise, he's just not given to commanding, as it were. He's more given to following, right? So, and in this case, he was following his mother, who wanted him to say the name, which is probably why Amy is so resentful
Bitter.
because
Yeah.
because she feels that she should have been the one, right? That she was much more serious and much more intelligent, and there's some truth to that. Yeah, so if Duterte was a sovereign trickster, BBM was maybe a sovereign party boy.
Um, Playboy or party boy. I mean, I've heard things from different ambassadors, Latin American ambassadors, like,
Yeah,
whoa,
yeah,
whoa, whoa, this is like Macondo. Like these are
yeah,
like
exactly.
Macondo stories.
Wow.
Don't tell me shit.
Yeah, yeah. I wish Nick Joaquin was still around. Boy, he could really, write something about BBM.
Well, I
Yeah,
hope we can piece things together. But thanks to you, I mean, this was I mean, I know your LaSalle background and all that, but I didn't know you were like just 1 year apart and watching play football. I mean, that's so conyo.
yeah,
He's such a
yeah.
conyo.
Yeah. And he was always surrounded by bodyguards and everything. It's very amusing. So yeah,
So the Kuting hypothesis makes sense. It's like,
absolutely,
it's chill.
absolutely.
It's chill.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I mean, his wife, right? Lisa, I mean, she's the powerhouse. She's the one that pushes him, right? Which is why everybody targets her because they know. I mean, Sarah Duterte is not going to waste her time, going after BBM. She goes after Lisa. So,
So what's the chismis naman about the cousin, Ferdinand Martin Romualdez? He was at Cornell. You went to the same school.
Yeah,
And
but I didn't know him. I mean, he was in
yeah.
a different planet. So yeah.
But I heard he was, he knew how to play the game, meaning not make too much noise, not stand out, just, keep his head down, get through through the whole process and all. So I don't know. I mean, I heard, so it makes sense, right? He has a cousin who's kind of smart and did his due diligence, a wife that is quite, knows what to do. So essentially,
And a mother. Don't forget the
I,
mother. Yeah.
yeah, the original. I always tell my
She's the
American.
OG. She's
She's
the
the OG.
OG.
I said, before there was Kardashian, there was Imelda Marcos. I mean, we're so lucky walang YouTube nung panahon ni Imelda. She would have been the biggest influencer on earth, right? She would
Oh
have been
yeah.
Mr. Beast
Yeah.
on steroids. But going back to this, there is, however, an interesting episode in history, right? I mean, first of all, we have a lot of cases of party boys. I mean, I was just, reading about the last hours of Assad, right? And he one of his son, and one of his brothers who died. Or if you watch Narcos, right? You have all of these stories of these bratty sons who
Mhm.
overcompensate, and then when they're in power, they go berserk.
Mhm.
That's not what we see here.
Mhm.
Though historically, there's also another interesting thing. So now we're playing the psychological game, right? The other thing is, aside from overcompensation tendency we see with brats who end up in positions of power or on the throne, yung isa pa is, ano yung kwento talaga na naka-camouflage siya at nag-special forces siya sa army training and all of that? At yung kwento nung iba
Yeah.
na nung sa mga huling araw ni Marcos Seniors, siya pa yung hawk. A friend called him the last hawk, right? That
Mhm.
actually siya yung parang anak ni Assad na babarilin mo yung mga tao na yan, don't give up. So, was that an aberration? Was that an overcompensation moment that withered away as soon as he was back into exile in Hawaii? What is your read of that?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it could be that. It could certainly, yeah. But my impression is that, faced with exile, I think people were the Marcos family is probably scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. Packing their Pampers bags with jewels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And that I think in the case of Bong Bong, he was probably trying to make a show of force, trying to tell the world, hey, we're still here, we're not going anywhere, blah, blah, blah. And of course, that never worked. In Hawaii, from what I understand from reading FBI files that did a lot of surveillance on the Marcos family, Bong Bong was a major conduit for the money. He would be the one to, I think the FBI nickname for him was Swallow, like the swallow, like the bird.
Like, wow.
Yeah,
It was
and
the bagman. Oh my.
he would make the phone calls. He would arrange for arms shipment, because there were a couple of attempts to launch a coup, and he would make arrangements for shipment of arms to the Philippines, which never happened. They tried to do it, but it never occurred. So he was doing that, and I think he was just trying to find a place for himself while they were in exile. And meanwhile, all the attention was on Imelda because she would go shopping, she would make these strange statements, and then of course there was the trial in New York where she was very much the center of attention, and going around with all the New York jet setters, including Trump, at that time. So yeah, yeah. So
I
so I
always
think that
that New York Society picture of Trump and Imelda next to each other. I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think the rest of the family, my impression was that they were strangely marginalized while they were in Hawaii. Uh, and in fact, I was in Hawaii recently, and we went out to Makiki Heights where they were exiled. And it's a very isolated area of Hawaii. It's all the way on top, round top. You get a nice panoramic view of the city, etc. But it's not like in the center of anything. And so I think their experience of exile was an experience of relative isolation. And I'm surprised no one has ever written a book about that. The Marcos in exile. I mean, I think that's a book that should be written, uh, and to see how they use their exile as a way of preparing for a return. Because by 19, is it 92? Imelda was
91.
back.
By
91.
91, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Imelda was back. And that wouldn't have been possible unless, number one, they had won the New York case, right? Number two, Marcos was already dead. So he wasn't calling the shots anymore because he was dead, right? And number three, things had changed in the Philippines, such that FVR had allowed Imelda to come in. And in fact, I have a really terrific picture of Leela's mom, the former Senator Leticia
Honey,
Hani,
yeah.
yeah, meeting her at the airport, right? And sitting beside her in the most foul looking face, putting on this, oh, yeah.
Gross, gross.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the exile, the history of their exile in Hawaii, may have been formative, and it would have been great for someone to
No,
actually
we have
dig
absolutely the
into
same
that.
reading. That's exactly my. I'm thinking about actually a
Mhm,
book about the return of the Marcoses. I think both of us had the piece immediately mine on Journal of Democracy, the return of Marcoses. So the not the missing part, but I think something happened because his father
mhm,
passed away. It was a
mhm.
luxurious, but at the same time isolated and painful exile. And I think
Yeah.
that's where you had the essentially the crystallization of a kind of a mindset that brought him eventually back into power with the biggest
Oh
man.
yeah, yeah,
This kind of
yeah,
a
yeah,
overly cautious, very systematic, self-constrained. Let's not go megalomaniac like mommy and daddy. Let's play this safe, and it has worked for him. Except
yeah,
no longer, right? And now I
yeah,
want to
yeah,
ask you about
yeah,
Sarah because this is the irony for BBM. His strategy of attrition warfare, let's just call it for that. Let's just call
yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
war of position. I'll use the Gramsci word. This war of position of his really worked so well, right? So
Mhm.
they build up from their bailiwick back to the national level to
Right,
and
right.
fake news channels. They made the revisionist project increasingly mainstream. They waited
They
for
they they pl- they played the long game. They
they
played the
played the
long game.
long
They
game
were they were so
really,
good
really
with that. Yeah,
smartly.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then things go crazy, which is not
Mhm,
again totally unsurprising because I don't know if you remember Prebus, the chief of staff of Trump. He said in
mhm,
his
mhm.
first term, a cabinet was like a zoo without fence, and if you put
Yeah.
if you put predators next to each, there's gonna be blood, right? Like, so I see the unity team as a zoo without a fence, and so eventually this thing happened. What everyone was foreseeing for quite some time. So, what is your read right now with this Duterte versus Marcos drama? Because
Yeah.
a while ago you kept on saying the role of the mom, Imelda, the role of the wife, the bitterness of the sister. Well, when it comes to Sara Duterte, she's also not operating in a vacuum. If anything, it's the dad who's the Karen, right?
Yeah.
He's the one who launched the war essentially
Mhm,
early this year by openly calling BBM things that you're telling us. Like, this guy is like a cocaine addict. He has to be
mhm,
taken out. So actually, Sarah, I think, would have preferred also a more BBM way of just keeping it quiet on an even kill and wait it out until 2028 maybe. But the
mhm,
dad really forced the case. And it's not like her brothers are paragons of sobriety, if I can put it that way. So that's an interesting dynamic too here, right? How
mhm,
the other veto players are influencing this clash, right?
mhm. Yeah, no, I think you're right. The strategy changed somewhere from trying to launch a coup, right, against Hori, because there's so many coups and so forth. And God only knows how much of those coups they were behind, to, as you say, going local, building up their local bailiwick and working their way back into the system, so to speak, exploiting the system for what it can do to them. Plus the fact that they were helped. And let's not forget this. People tend to forget this. They had so much money. I mean, the money that had been plundered is certainly behind their ability to get back into the national scene, right? And so much of the political work they were doing was trying to sort of compel people to forget about that, to forget about the theft, to forget about the torture, to forget about the violence, right? So they were, to a certain extent, quite successful in doing that. Uh, with Sarah Duterte, I don't know. I mean, the thing about she's a very interesting character, right? Uh, I should say. First of all, she's what I would refer to as a phallic woman, right? She's a phallic woman in the sense that, I mean, she doesn't.
He wants to
Just
outman the man. Yes.
that's right. I mean, she has obviously quite a bit of testosterone in her system, right? And like you never hear about the husband. Where the hell is the husband? He's completely overshadowed by her, right? Uh, and so she's managed to, in some ways, succeed her father, uh, and put a sort of somewhat feminine face to it, but nonetheless, she's just as tough, and she's just as unforgiving, I think, as her father, right? Uh, and I think that the BBM, the unity team, was bound to fail. It was temporary, it was contingent, it was conjunctural. And once BBM was in place, I think the move was on to make sure that Sarah didn't interfere. That's why she didn't get military. She didn't get Secretary of Defense. She got education instead, right?
Which she
And
turned into a defense department with all the
yeah,
confidential funds.
yeah, that's
Insane.
right. That that's right. That's right. And Congress, just sort of rallied around BBM and tried to get rid of Sarah, right? Which is they're in the process of doing. I mean, I don't know if the impeachment process will work, but certainly it's placed a huge sword over her head, right? In a way that never happened with the father. I mean, the father was much better at controlling things, right? So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen,
Well, speaking
right?
of the sword, I mean, are there many countries? I mean, I've been asking everyone, right? Um, Marami bang bansa kung saan yung vice-presidente ay sasabihin niya, parang nagde-dream team ako na pupuguran ko tong presidente na to or may kinontrata ako na assassin na yayariin na to pag niyari ako. Like, how
No,
many,
that's
I mean, Latin America, I cannot think of even in Middle East,
mm,
maybe? I mean, like, this is crazy. This is like Saddam when he was the vice president threatening him. This is crazy.
yeah, no, I mean, it is crazy, and the reason she can do that is she knows she can get away with it. She knows, and she can use it to her advantage. By saying that, she projects an image of herself as tough, as ready to rumble, as it were. And if BBM was made of different stuff, first thing he would have done was to arrest her, put her in jail, maybe even have her killed for subversion. But that didn't happen. She's still out there, right? So again, she was probably testing the waters. She was probably trying to figure out how far can I go? How much can I push this? And she's in that sense, it's worked. Right? She's been very successful doing it. So who knows? But it does give her a fighting chance for the next election, right? By being able to say things like that. So, yeah.
So, you think that BBM is just gonna, like just gonna muddle through and kick the can down the road and just wait this out, this storm out, and Sarah will just wait for momentum to shift in her favor. Because as we speak, her numbers are really low. Her net
Yeah,
approval is just
yeah,
22%. Her dad
yeah,
had 90%
yeah,
net approval at
yeah,
some point.
yeah,
Only
yeah,
3%. This is insane.
yeah. No, I think EVM is going to let Congress take care of it instead of him doing it. I mean, Congress and as you know, the legislature always moves much slower, right? They're always mired in process, and I think that's what's going to happen. So yeah, yeah.
Baka naman, baka naman, di ba? Malapit na elections, right? That also adds
Okay.
greasy hands to the conversations,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
which
yeah,
which
exactly.
complicates it. Now, going back again to Duterte, what could make him exceptional at some point,
Mhm.
and to a certain degree, maybe people close to him, Bato de la Rosa, who knows, maybe Sara at some point, is the ICC angle. I mean,
Yeah.
this would be really something, right? So, as far as I know, it's only the Myanmar junta leader, a horrible person, and Rodrigo Duterte, who are the two former or current heads of state in Asia
Mhm.
seriously face potential investigation, if not warrants of arrest by ICC. How do you see that from a historical standpoint?
Yeah. Oh, don't forget Netanyahu. I mean,
Oh,
there's a warrant.
well, I mean,
Isn't there?
I say Asia, I kind of separate
I see. Yeah, yeah,
Mediterranean, like, yeah,
yeah.
it's like, and then never mind. When I was like, let's not go there. Okay, let's just say Asians like us, like you and I,
Yeah,
Asians.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think the ICC, if they do come up with a warrant for his arrest, will make some kind of an impact. But BBM has already said that the Philippines will not prosecute Duterte. So I don't know what kind of a difference it would make. He's not likely to leave the country to go anywhere else and risk being arrested. So I think it will be, if you will, a kind of moral victory. for the administration. I mean, for the Filipino people as a whole, if in fact the ICC comes up with a warrant, it's not enforceable. So I don't know what it will amount to. As I said, aside from it being a moral victory, yeah.
I want to go a little bit forward and then we'll go all the way back. So Star Wars style. So the the decline. So what I'm seeing here is a mutual destruction. Para
Mhm,
silang bugbog sarado. Yung mga numero ni BBM ay sobrang baba sa Mindanao. So obviously that's
mhm,
where you see the Mindanao backlash, Solid South backlash. Sara's numbers are horrible in Luzon, right? Even in Visayas,
mhm,
she's beginning to bleed. So clearly these two are hurting each other. Um, the one group, and I call them a group, who are benefiting right now is actually the Tulfo brothers. Two
mhm,
brothers are vying for number one in Senate, and Rafi Tulfo, since quarter four of last year, based on some of the surveys unpublished, I know, has been number one to be the next president. How do you
mhm,
understand Tulfoismo? Let's just call it. So obviously Tulfoismo is not EJK, right? That's the
mhm,
one big
mhm,
difference. You never, even Ben
mhm,
Tulfo, the most
mhm,
rambunctious brother, never
mhm,
goes and
mhm,
say kill people. But obviously
mhm,
there's this controversy with their idea of,
mhm,
like publicity, trial by publicity, or some say
mhm,
publicity by
mhm.
trial, right? Like, it goes both. How do you understand the Tulfoismo phenomenon for
Yeah.
21st century Philippines? I mean, this is a time
Mhm,
where the Philippines is the wealthiest it has ever been in terms of per capita income, in terms of middle class population. Of
mhm.
course, we're far from where we should be, but it's interesting, isn't it?
Well, what makes it interesting is that unlike previous politicians, the Tulfo brothers do not have a provincial bailiwick. So what is their basis? Media. I mean, it's completely about media. Starts with radio. Did they have TV programs? Wala naman,
Yes,
ano?
Sam, TV5. We're actually
TV,
colleagues on TV5, but they're really strong
okay.
on YouTube. I mean, like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Social media, radio, TV, etc. So here you have a interesting phenomenon where they're not beholden to a local constituency because of their dominance of the media, right? So they are immediately propelled into a national constituency. Wala nang local, puro national na, and the diaspora, right? The Filipinos in the diaspora, of course, listen to them, they're big fans, etc, and they're seen as problem solvers, right? That's their reputation. May problema ka, tawagan mo yung itulfo mo yan. Diba? That's an
it's a
expression,
verb.
itulfo.
Tulfo is a
Yeah,
verb.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the assumption is that, who needs extrajudicial killings? You can just get the Tulfo to sick on these people, right? Call them, etc., humiliate them, have them arrested, etc. So they're seen as these problem solvers. They response is immediate, and so forth. And so people like that. It's a version of the strongman politics, in the case of the Tulfos, right? And I think that's one reason why they're very popular. For the same reason that Vic Soto continues to be popular, again because of his media presence, right? So people underestimate that. Robin Padilla, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
Willie Revilla, man. Yeah, Willie
Willie Revillame, of
Absolutely.
course. Yeah, yeah. And so I think that the role of the media has been very important, much more so than local politics in this case. So it's not surprising that they would be up on top of the polls.
Absolutely. I mean, for us, actually, this is belated, right? You would have expected Tulfo
Mhm.
to actually. I think what happened with Tulfo is like, wait, if Duterte can do it, hell, we can do it better, right? We're even more
Yeah,
popular than
yeah,
that guy. So I think that's
yeah.
what's happened, right? From what I hear, even the Kuya Mon, who started it all, saying, wait, bakit kayo tumatapat akong tumakbo? In fact, their problem could be embarrassment of riches, wherein three of them want to run for president in
Oh
20.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
gonna be crazy. It's an
yeah,
interesting. We have never had
yeah,
anything like that. Three family members simultaneously in Senate, none of them from a bailiwick, totally new out of nowhere, quote unquote dynasty. It's a fascinating situation.
yeah,
Yeah, ako,
yeah, yeah.
now I'm studying like differences between the brothers, like Ben versus
Yeah.
Erwin. Like it now, it's the variations that matter to me.
Yeah, yeah. The other interesting thing to watch are the Villars, right? And again, you have to ask the question, where did the strengths of the Villars come from? If the Tulfo is all about media, Villars, of course, is all about real estate. It's all about business. I mean, they're buying up everything. They're spectacularly wealthy, right? And so all the kids are in the Senate or in Congress, etc. And again, it has nothing to do with local politics. does everything to do with their ability to accumulate capital, social and otherwise. And so if it's not media, it's money, right? And that allows them, like media, it allows them to bypass local constituency and get on the national wavelength right away. So, yeah,
How dare you, Vicente? Sila, according to Cynthia, mayaman kami. Matagal na kami mayor dyan sa Las Piñas. Si mga lolo ko pa. I mean, like, I don't know if you've heard stories. Like, what? I
yeah,
don't know if this is true. Someone told me this is crazy. Sabi na, may mga times na yung mga Villar, they come up with like some land title in a government building and sabi niya,
yeah,
sa amin
yeah,
yan 200 years ago. Like, ganun daw yung mga kwento. So, that's my slight disagreement. They still have, or at least pretensions to that kind of a lineage of old rich in, I don't know, Las Piñas or Parañaque or whatever. Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's an interesting thing. Um,
yeah.
Now, I want to really rewind all the way back, right? Like, how did, so parang yung episode 1 ng 100, 100 Year of Solitude, yung bago siya ma-execute, di ba? Yung inisip niya yung begin. So now, imagine you are in the eye of Colonel Buendia, right? Like now, you're going now inside the eye of Colonel Buendia. Vicente, how did we go from Jose Rizal and that
Mhm.
generation to this, right? How can I mean obviously we can write 10 volumes of books on that. But to the degree that we can make a sensible systematic study,
Mhm.
what was the rot at the core of the apple? Because that's one of the things I appreciate about you because you deconstructed the
Mhm.
revolutionary generation. That there was something really lacking from the very because on the outside, glamorous men of Renaissance men, right? I mean, some would call Rizal the last Renaissance man. Isabella de los Reyes, mi favorito, like another great guy. So how did we go from that level of leadership and generational revolutionary zeal to, let's be honest, laughing stock of democracies, right? The kind of a
Yeah,
fiesta
yeah,
democracy that makes even Latin America look more respectable than us.
yeah. Well, I mean, for starters, if you want to talk about exceptions, I mean, Rizal was the exception, right? He
So
certainly.
immediately that's your way out. Like, oh no, no, you isolate Rizal, he's the guy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I mean, there were others, of course, who were exemplary, but Rizal was the most exemplary, which is why he, at some point,